are a Jeannie Dayani, you would be right at the charge of that. They are not only a power-packed, intelligent, kind, loving, show-up-for-you community, but they are devoted to their sons. And I think when you approach high school years and middle school years, you worry about separation and feeling like you're losing them. Mr. Joya, under your leadership, the bond of moms and the closeness to our boys has been real and alive and cherished. So I'll just take a minute to say thank you, because we get to do this as moms and sons, and it's special. It's not everywhere. It's a blessing. So I just personally want to thank you for that. Wells and I went to Boston College as a walk-on softball player. He played lacrosse. We lived in the same dorm. We had the same group of friends. We had the same schedule. So we were on the same bus a lot. And I would fall asleep sometimes on the bus, and Wells would make sure I was awake for my stop. And he would always make sure, as you're gonna watch this video and you're gonna understand more about this extraordinary young man who went on to volunteer in Nyack as a fireman, and then expressed what became heroism to the world, but I knew to be just part of his character all along, on September 11th. Wells was a dear friend. In fact, Connor, when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer my senior year of high school, and I left for school, and she said, go get it. I found a friend like Wells. And Allison, your son Wells showed up at my dorm with a stuffed animal for me. He was a dear, dear friend to me. And so when I heard you were coming, I was like, I'll take a minute at the microphone, even though I'm supposed to be retired from this kind of thing. It's a blessing to be able to share the kind of person that Wells was, and his spirit lives on in kindness. Wells made sure everybody got home safely in our dorm. Wells made sure that everybody had something to eat when they were hungry. He was so full of kindness and character and strength, and his skills on the lacrosse field were matched by his skills of people. So by the way, if you find Allison later tonight, she loves her time with people. Wells gets that from you. And so do ask some questions. There'll be more. And when you see this video, I hope that it just stamps on your heart. So Allison, first I'll tell you, it has been, when you find out that your friend has been tragically lost and heroically so, you ask yourself, how can I keep his memory alive? And what can we do as friends? And so I made your family a promise. I brought my own red bandana, because every year on 9/11, I will run to your firehouses as long as I can. It hurts more every year now. I want to let you know, 22 years later, I'm a little more sore. But I made you a promise that I would run every 9/11 with the flag and with the red bandana and tell the story of your son's courage and kindness and selflessness, and I would not stop as long as my legs could take me. So I'm thankful to be able to look at you and have kept that promise, and I will do my best to do so. And if not, these two right here will be running for me, Isaiah and Taylor. So thank you for raising a son that makes you want to keep a promise. Wells, I want to let you all know, when you see this video, this message, and to the firemen here and to the captain who's probably seen me in tears a couple times approaching the door, thank you for letting me in. Thank you for holding that red bandana in your stations. Thank you for listening to the stories of a courageous young man who was willing to do what you're willing to do, go into hard things and do the right thing sacrificially. So it's an honor to have you here, and I can't thank you enough, and we can't thank you enough as a school. You're great neighbors, and your hearts are made different, and we appreciate that. I will say this, Allison's gonna come up and speak about Wells. She can say so much better what I cannot. And you're gonna look at this, and you're going to see a hero in the midst of attack and tragedy. But Wells did not discover his heroic character or become a hero on 9/11. He practiced the character of heroism every single day, Allison. He did. He practiced it. He was devoted to the discipline of staying ready to be a good person at a time that was not good. And I saw it. I got to live that out with him at Boston College as a friend. I know that every single friend is devoted to him because they saw how selfless he was. But that did not become who he was on September 11th when those towers were hit. His character of strength, selflessness, courage, nobility, lack of pride, that's who you raised. And it's what he decided to practice every day. So as you see this, I would just say the question everyone can ask in their hearts and just be reminded of is that in times of trial, you will discover who you've been practicing to be all along. And so to all the gentlemen out there, you are the finest group of guys that I know. You are a gentleman, you're strong, you're courageous, you're brave, you're tender-hearted when you need to be, and you've been practicing to be a person like Wells in a moment of trial, and that's good. So I would just like to welcome Allison Crowther to the stage and say that you raised a young man with a hero's heart, and he decided to hone that hero's heart every day of his life. And he is dearly missed, I know by you the most and his family. But we will continue to share this message. And so if anyone wants to run with me to the firehouses, I might show up with the crowd this year. Thank you all so much. Mrs. Crowther, it's an honor to welcome you to the stage tonight.
I'm a very short person, so you mostly would see the top of my head, I think, if I spoke otherwise. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that beautiful, beautiful discussion and talk about Wells. And I never knew about the stuffed animal. That's a new beautiful story for me. My husband would sum it up he always said Wells came with the software installed. You know, we feel like we really had very little to do, actually, with all of our children, raising them. They were just all so good. So thank you. It's beautiful to hear about our son from your perspective. It's just wonderful. So, and thank you, Mr. Joya, for inviting me here today to speak to you all at this incredibly important event. I'm so impressed by all of you wonderful young gentlemen here at the Academy. Everyone's so gracious and friendly and well-spoken and polite. I did a little, research on the school before I came. Gentlemen scholars and athletes, and musicians, by the way. Wonderful. That would be Wells too. That would fit right with who he was. But before I start speaking about Wells, I have to address what happened at the Covenant School. It was a terrible tragedy, and a recurring one in our country. And a beautiful little Hallie, I understand her brothers attend the school. It's just a devastating situation that we have in our country right now. And so it's complicated, I know. And there are many different thoughts about how to approach and deal with this situation. But I'm hoping that what I have to share with you all today about my son may help you all think about how to fix this problem in our wonderful country, so that this kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. So that's the story of our son. And you see the commitment that firefighters have for saving life and property. So these gentlemen here sitting at the table representing their companies, I salute you. It's a lifelong dedication, and they're there to preserve life and property and save anyone's lives who are in danger. And so we thank you. So what does a family do when they lose a loved one in this way? A lot of people have to be asking that question here now too. It isn't easy. It's a very difficult journey. I worried about my daughters, that they would not be derailed. Honor was very close to her brother. She had graduated from BC and was now at St. John's Law School on a presidential scholarship. She had to give that up. My other daughter, Paige, was graduating from high school, and she went on to Boston College also. So they both landed on their feet really well, and thank God for that. We're a strong family, and we're close, and a lot of support from family and friends, and Wells's dear friends from Boston College and from his years in Nyack growing up. They all came with love to support us. What I needed to figure out, though, was what to do. And the message that came in loud and clear to me from the very beginning was, the only way I can fight against this evil is to work to bring good into the world. But I had no idea, of course, how to do that. So with time, people started hearing this story. It came out in 2002. And I started getting invitations to go to speak at schools, and we were getting letters from students and teachers and from around the country about how they were hearing Wells's story, and the teachers were teaching it in a way. So when another friend from Boston College, Timothy Epstein, who is an attorney in Chicago, very brilliant young man, called in 2011 to say, Mrs. Crowther, I'm an advisor for the Fetzer Institute. They're doing a study, a study to find out how love and forgiveness can work in the world. And why don't you consider making a proposal for your next creative step with the charitable trust? And I said, well, our Wells Remy Crowther Charitable Trust that we established in 2001. And I said, well, I know what that needs to be. We need to create a series of lessons to reflect some meaningful concepts relating to Wells's story, because this was already out there in the universe going around. So, with support from the Fetzer Institute, based in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and connecting up with some wonderful educators, we developed the Red Bandana Project, which is a series of lessons that I'm going to touch on today with all of you. And as I said before, perhaps, hopefully, some of the things that I may say today that you may have garnered from watching the video and the topics I'm going to discuss, hopefully that may help you all bring some ideas and motivation to work towards solving serious issues in our society today. So the first lesson is leadership. And I generally speak to auditoriums filled with kids during the class day. So I say, all right, tell me, what do you think? What do you think is what makes a good leader? And ideas come up, and they're wonderful ideas that are put forth. But that was the first lesson that the educators I worked with wanted to work on. So our concept, what I say to them is, I think good leadership is not just someone who says it's my way or the highway, unless you're talking to a police officer or military or a teacher, or your parents. You really better do what they ask you to do, especially your moms, right? So, but to be an enlightened leader and not a despot and not a bully, it's really good to understand the people that you are leading, to have a good, clear picture of where you want to go, but to have a good understanding of the people that you're leading as well. Caring for others is a huge part of being a good leader. Not only the people you work with on your team, whatever that may be, here in school, on a sports team, in an orchestra, at the firehouse, in your family. Teams are everywhere. They shift around, the composition of those teams change, but there are leadership positions every single day and moment for you to be aware of. Caring for others and understanding others and respecting others is a huge part of being, I believe, an enlightened and good and productive leader. I met a very lovely gentleman today who was a former graduate, an interesting gentleman, David Toon, this morning. And one of the things he said was, things happen in serendipity. So I'm going to throw that story in because it really fits beautifully with the caring for others topic. And serendipity. So I've got a driver to pick me up to get me to the airport this morning, and I'm talking to this gentleman. It turns out he was from Nicaragua. He's of Mayan descent, the ancient Mayan culture, and out of the blue, he starts talking about love and forgiveness, and it was like, really? Okay. And so we had a great talk out to the airport, and he was saying that when he came to this country, he came from a prominent, respected family in Nicaragua, but when he arrived here, he considered himself, an immigrant, hardworking. He bought a home in Jersey City, in a very bad part of Jersey City. He told me he was a history teacher, and he ended up in management with a company called Cargill, which makes packaging products. So he's in this community that's not at all, it's very underserved, a lot of trouble. And they start having children. And his wife says, we have to get out of here. I don't want to have our children go to this school. It's terrible. The communities, but we just have to go. And he said, no, we are staying. And we're going to get into those schools, at that school, and we're going to make it better. And we're going to work on making it better. So he got involved with the school. He saw that there was a lot of young kids were not dressed well or clean particularly or whatever. And there was this one boy that was always seemed hungry and was dirty, and it just was a problem. So instead of teasing the boy or making fun of him or sidelining him, this gentleman went to the home and found what was going on there. He met the father, who came to the door, I guess in the morning, with a beer in his hand, looking terrible. And this gentleman said, look, he said, your son is suffering. And he's hungry at school, he's not clean, he's not dressed well. What's going on here? And the man said, my wife died, I'm in terrible shape, I've been trying to get a job, I can't get a job. And this man said, if you clean yourself up and stop the drinking, do you want to work? And he said, yes, I want to work. He said, I will get you a job. And so, because of his position at this company, he was actually able to get this man a job. The man, in 5 days, appeared in a suit and a tie to come to this interview. And although his superior kind of questioned the move, he ended up giving him a job, and the man and the boy, and everything is so much better now. So that's real caring for others. That's not just looking at a problem and walking away from it. It's communicating, it's understanding, it's getting into, look at the problems and understand really what's going on before judgment is made. So that's a huge part of WELS, caring for others, and that's a huge part of a message we like to carry. Team. No, there is no I in team. Team was a big thing for WELS. NIAC, and WELS our kids all went through the public schools. My husband was educated in a private school. I was in a public school, but very fine, growing up. But the NIAC is an extremely diverse community. There are children there that grow up in projects and in troubled sections of NIAC, and there are children that grow up in mansions overlooking the Hudson River and everything in between. There are different cultures, different religions, different racial backgrounds, different everything. And Wells said to me, talked to me about this a lot, Mom, I love being on a team, because when you're on a team, all the differences fade away and you become like one big family working toward a common goal. So that's really how we ought to look at each other as citizens of this country, that we're a big family. Well, yes, we've got a lot of differences. That's the beauty of the United States of America. That was the purpose of our country, freedom, for people to express themselves and celebrate their different religions and their different beliefs, but in a peaceful way, and in an understanding way, and in a non-judgmental way. So that's what he loved about being on a team, and I think it's a model and the team can be a sports team or a band or an orchestra. I play in an orchestra, or your family, as I said, many forms of team. With that being said, the power of one is another lesson that we address, that it lies within each and every one of us every day, in ways both big and small. It doesn't have to be something like this, but in ways both big and small, to make impactful differences that can literally change people's lives. Wells was known as an athlete on campus. A young girl came up to me after he was lost, and she said, Mrs. Crowther, I was very shy. I didn't know a lot of people. Wells, every time he saw me, he'd come up to me and said, hi, how are you doing? And she said, that made my day, just acknowledging me and being friendly and a smile. Or sitting with somebody who sits alone at a table at lunch, or they're holding a door open for someone, or picking some. You're all Southern gentlemen, right? So that I'm sure you do anyway. But there are just a myriad of ways that small acts of kindness can have long-lasting effect and results. Bridging divides is another topic that we cover, which means creating understanding between different groups. This is huge. And seeking to understand before trying to be understood is a really important thing to do. How can you communicate with someone else unless you really understand how they're thinking or what their perspective is or where they're coming from. You learn, and I heard this serendipitously on a television report, that some of the most powerful, successful people in the world go to meetings and say nothing. All they do is listen. That's how you learn. You learn by listening. And that's how you create understanding, by there's an old phrase, walking in someone else's shoes, right? Don't judge me until you walk in my shoes and really understand what my life is like. So bridging divides was something I learned about when I went to Assisi, Italy, on a big, it was called a pilgrimage for love and forgiveness that was hosted by the Fetzer Institute, bringing something like 600 people together from all walks of life that had all done their study, done special programs, projects worked around their theme of love and forgiveness. That was quite eye-opening. Anyway, so important concept. Forgiveness. That's a big one, especially for many of us, and especially for me in my situation with Wells, our family. My lead writers, I had 5 brilliant educators, well respected, working on these lessons with me. And they said, well, Allison, we're not going to write anything about love and forgiveness until you, and about forgiveness until you do first. And I said, well, I guess we're not going to have a lesson on forgiveness, are we? Because it took me a year of very intense thinking and experience, going to Assisi, hearing stories about forgiveness from other parts around the world that were just amazing, that I came to this working concept for me, that 9/11 drew a line in the sand for me, that most things can be forgiven. I still will not forgive these terrorists. In fact, I am going down to testify at the trial of the 9/11 mastermind and his co-conspirators down at Gitmo sometime in the future. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, we'll see how that's going to be an experience. We've been there once already. Anyway, but how can you forgive Hitler? Maybe you can forgive some of the people that got sucked into his crazy madness, but, Hitler, I truly still feel not everything can be forgiven. But I also discovered that there's kind of a gray zone, too, and sometimes forgiveness is hardest when the issues are between the people closest to you. So be patient with that and love. Just love and be open to it. And the other serendipitous thing was this driver today said, I had a business partner, he cheated me out of a lot of money, and then and our company broke apart. I lost everything in the investment. But I forgave him right away. I walked away. This man could have been a part of the Fetzer Institute, as far as I was concerned. He said, because I wanted to release that. And that's the big thing about forgiveness. You release yourself. You don't waste your life energy on negativity and on hate and on gripes against people that really, it does more harm to you, and it ties up your inner light, so that you can't be your best person. And it doesn't do anything to the person who wronged you, but what this man found out was that on his deathbed, the man that cheated him asked to speak to him. And so he went to the hospital to speak to him, and the man said, will you please forgive me? I am so sorry for what I did. This was like 8 years later. So you know that man had been eating himself alive over what he did for 8 years. Meanwhile, the man who was wrong let it go, forgave it, moved on with his life, and he succeeded and grew. So, that's a big thing. Don't let yourself get caught up and tangled up in anger and envy and all the negative things. There's too much light in you to let out to the world, to make yourself, to a better person and to grow. So, carpe diem, I always end with that. Because we're the creatures on this planet with opposable digits and elevated brains. We are capable of doing the most good, and we're also capable of doing the most bad, right? So take your moment here. None of us chose to, your mothers might have chosen for you all to be here. I shouldn't say that, your parents. But we don't choose our place in time. We are here now at this moment. And you all are in such a wonderful place to be at this beautiful school and institution with all of your dedicated parents, mothers, your dedicated mothers and teachers, and all the advantages that you have of being here. Just embrace the thrill of that and the potential that you have to be incredible people and get out into the world and really be in a position to make significant difference. To you moms and you sons, Wells and I had a beautiful, beautiful friendship, relationship, love. We just adored each other. When he was lost, at least my husband and I said, there wasn't, we don't, except for losing him, of course, there's nothing we felt we had left unsaid about loving each other and supporting whatever it was in life we wanted to do. So we miss him deeply. His sisters are sharing his story. My daughter actually wrote a book, too, a children's book, to tell her children about Wells. So they all know, even our 6-year-old Henry knows about Wells. And Clara, who's 2, she's the youngest, will eventually know. But I wish for you all that you have as beautiful and loving and lifelong relationship with each other as Wells and I had for the short time he was with us. But it was powerful and beautiful. And so this is now how I spend my time with my son, hoping to, reach out to people and hoping to somehow encourage people to bring good into the world. So thank you very much. I appreciate being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.